Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 3,826 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We had a banger of a week. Thank you guys so much. That video I did last week on backwards compatible disc only games was suggested by you guys. And literally that was one of the most popular videos I've had all year. One of the most subscriber videos too. So thank you guys so much for the suggestions. As always, I'm so happy to respond to what you guys want to see as well. Because honestly, I just felt like I was retreading old news in that video, but it's really nice to see so many new people show up. And yeah, you know, when you've been doing this for 6 months, talking about something you talked about 4 months ago is kind of cool. And that's kind of how it felt. Going through that, I was like, oh, that's a video I talked on Xbox Video 1, 11, 18. Like some of the games I got so long ago, like 50 Cent's Blood on the Sand, I had no idea. But anyways, that was such a great video. Thank you guys for the response. This week, we are back to another 10 games, which once again, this was largely made possible from Michael from Lake Oswego, Oregon. He pretty much donated a grip of games. Almost all of them are from his collection, which shows that they are immaculate. So thank you again, Michael. A little bit of new business. The Game Awards were this last week. To be honest, this was the first year in many years I actually didn't even watch them. I don't know, I just wasn't all that interested. 2024 for myself has been kind of a down year as far as new releases go. The fact that Astrobot won Game of the Year, which is basically just a Nintendo game, but it has Sony's name slapped on it, kind of telling. There's always been a Sony bent as far as the Game Awards go, and it's just a night where, you know, video games... It's not about Hollywood, it's not about mainstream kind of, you know, Marvel culture, all that's all trying to get the stars and the celebrities, and I'm just over it. So, I've heard some people say it was great, some people said it was meh. I've seen a few of the trailers, nothing all that interesting came out from it. I even watched a few episodes of that new Amazon show Secret Level, which to be honest, I was expecting it to be more of a documentary about the games. I didn't realize it was scenarios in those worlds. So I was kind of let down by that too. Though Shadow Labyrinth, the weird Pac-Man game, kind of looks interesting. Anyways, that's not why you're here today. We are talking about another 10 games that you should pick up on the Xbox 360. Let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Starting it off this week, we're talking about a game that I never imagined I'd come across. It is one of the hardest to find 360 games out there, but it's also not one that's all that popular. I'm not sure if it's based on a cartoon or some sort of series, or if it was only released in, say, French Canada, because even the back of the case is half in French or half in another language, half in English. But that game is Asterix at the Olympic Games. Once again, Michael donated this one. This is probably, it's about an $80, $100 game right now, but you just don't find it. You don't find it anywhere. I thought it was just going to be a hokey sports game, but when you put it in, there is some kind of crazy story. I don't know if you're playing as Greek entities or Roman entities. The Olympics are going on, but they're only being allowed by Romans. There's a guy named Love Tricks that's got to win the hearts and affection of some girl by winning the games. And then there's a hyper-realistic dude, like this, like, you know, like David Hasselhoff and SpongeBob dude, where he's just in the game world and the characters are interacting with him, and then they throw him into the sun. Like, it's so bonkers. And it's more or less almost like a Banjo-Kazooie type platformer where you can switch between the big dude and the little dude. And then intertwined through that are these Olympic races or these Olympic games. So you have the high jump, you have throwing, a hammer throw, all like the race, just like a standard race, like all these things that feel like you're playing an old school track and field game on the NES. where it does have you interchange A and B in order to go faster. It's funny. It's one of those things where it's so unique that it really elevates the game because you can't predict where it's gonna go. Like, putting this game in, I expected it to be like a Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Just pick your events, go from there. But there's a zany story. There's such a weird plot going through. The art style is nuts. It's very, very interesting, and one of the more unique games in my collection now, and one of the ones I am so happy to have, because this was one that I honestly never thought I would come across it, or I would splurge on it, just because it is, like I thought it was just gonna be a stupid sports game, which it is, but it's got a unique overworld environment where you're doing like action platforming type stuff like you would do in Brutal Legend. So, very cool one. If you ever see this for cheap, pick it up. This is one I only learned of in the last year as well. And it couldn't go up significantly too. So, yeah, this one right here. Thank you again, Michael. Cannot believe you sent me the things you sent me this week. But this one is definitely the crown jewel. And I just loved it so much. You guys should check it out too, because it is so incredibly unique. All right, moving on from there. One of the games that I have had a chance to pick this up, I saw this in a bunch of Hidden Gems videos and a bunch of lists back in February and March of this year. I even saw it at the local game store that I shop at for maybe $15, $16. I just didn't pull the trigger on it. I found it at Father's Day, but it had a horrible cover on it. It was all destroyed, and then the guy looked at eBay and offered me $27. It was basically disc only. It has started to come down to earth, but that game is Project Silph. Now, I hope you guys got the free DLC like I talked about in my DLC video, because there was free DLC for this game that gave like 6 extra missions and things of that, maybe some extra weapons. But it plays a lot like the Dark Alliance game, where it's a 3D ship combat game, which, to be honest, these are just not my jam. As soon as I started playing it, I don't like the free range of movement. It's hard for me to get my bearings in it. Though I will say, of all the 3D games where you're in a ship going off and shooting at stuff, this one probably I enjoyed more than any of them. It told me what to do. It was pretty through line with what I was doing. But ultimately, it's just going around and shooting down enemies. And it's funny, I really like Rogue Squadron 2 on the GameCube. I don't know if it's just because it really hit that height of Star Wars at the time back then. That was when the special editions had just come out, and I think only the Phantom Menace had come out. But that game, if I recall, focused more on the original trilogy and everything else. And yeah, you did the Hoth thing for like the umpteenth time, but it just really felt great. But the thing that game got so well is that you, for the most part, you always had a horizon to orient to. And these games where you're just out in the middle of space and you can make a 360 turnaround, I just can't get behind. But it controls really well. It feels good. The voice acting was solid. The storyline, I could see it going places. And like I said, of all the ones I've played of this genre, this one by far felt the easiest, controlled the best, and is one that I would recommend over the other ones. So if this game is your jam, get it. It's come down to earth again. It got up around $30, $40. I think it is back down to around $20. Grab it now, because that's one that's likely going to go back up again. All right. Now, I have the third game in this series. I've never been a huge fan of them, to be honest. And this came out, I want to say, in 2009. I know that my buddy from high school was a big fan of this game because it is local 4-player co-op. And that game is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. And these games were the first ones that I ever famously heard got delisted, so they started going up in price. But I don't have the first one. I don't have the second one. I don't have the gold edition. I missed out on getting the gold edition for a deal a few months back. But I finally have one of these. And as someone that really was just a fan of Spider-Man when this game came out, I did not know that Marvel had some interconnected universe. Same thing with DC. I was unaware of this. Blissfully so, in my opinion. And getting into this game, when this came out, it was 2009, so this was right after Iron Man came out. The MCU was in its infancy. Maybe The Incredible Hulk, maybe Thor had come out by then, which I did see. I saw the first 3 movies. I missed out on Captain America. I saw Iron Man 2, and then I saw The Avengers. And by then, I just got over it, to be honest. I got over it. But going back to this, because this came out in 2009, so that's right around when Marvel was bought by Disney, or maybe slightly after that, but this game was already coming out. And what's so nice to see is that all of the characters in this game look like the characters, which is funny. Back then, I didn't know who Thor was. I didn't know who Nick Fury. I didn't know who any of these people were, but now I do. Some of it through osmosis, some of it because I have watched a lot of the MCU movies, either just after the fact or just because everyone talks about them. So seeing Iron Man look like Iron Man, Spider-Man look like Spider-Man, Captain America look like Captain America, and Wolverine look like just, it's nice. It's nice that, oh, this is a game that actually respects the source material, isn't swapping this and that, isn't replacing this and that, and is just, it is fun to play. And after playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Switch when it came out 5-6 years ago, I just wasn't into that kind of combat style. This game continues that, but because it is an older game, it's a little bit less intricate, a little bit less annoying in my opinion, and I enjoyed it more. Maybe it's just because you start with Captain America, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Iron Man versus the ones you start with in that game, which was, I think it was the Guardians of the Galaxy or something. Like, again, someone I could care less. Gameplay is very repetitive. It's just a standard, dungeon crawler-esque beat-em-up type thing. You get power-ups that you can use. You have team-up moves that you can use. And there's a lot of characters to unlock. Now, I didn't get very far into the game, but overall, I can see why these were so popular. This is truly a game for the fans or a game for local multiplayer. I'm sure it had an online multiplayer too. I'm still not into it that much, but as far as it being a time capsule, I would love to go back to it and play more because, once again, all the characters are the way they should be instead of, getting bastardized like what's happening today. So that's something that will definitely, I can see why that would also make these games very popular and hard to find. Okay, this was another cool one that Michael sent. Once again, all these games so far have been sent by Michael, so almost every single one of them, until I get to the lame games. But this one was one that skyrocketed early in the FOMO. It has come back down to earth. It's probably back around $30, $40 complete, and that game is 99 Nights 2. So famously, I have 99 Nights 1. I actually picked it up years ago at a thrift store for like $3, knowing nothing about it. This is before anyone was collecting 360. I'm talking 2015, 2014. And I just grabbed it because it had an unusual cover. Looking at the back, it did not look like a standard racing or sports game. So I took a chance on it. And as someone who's not a huge fan of the Dynasty Warriors series, I do find that Konami did a better way, basically outdid the Koei Tecmo people with this style of game, because it more or less is Dynasty Warriors, but it just feels better. It just feels better. You are taking out armies of enemies as one guy, but for some reason that one guy feels like he can take out those armies of enemies, and they also don't just feel like they're running up to you and then standing there waiting to get their fight in. I can't really explain it. It's the same feel. It feels the same as far as the way it looks, the way the combat is, but actually playing the game does not feel the same. And I really like this. Of all those Dynasty Warrior type games, this one was by far the most enjoyable one I played to date. Though I couldn't tell you how you garnered power to unleash your specials. There was a blue bar I couldn't quite figure out how to utilize. But as far as just the violence, being able to cut people up, cut the enemies up, having actual objectives besides just kill guy here, move kill guy here. Instead, it's like, oh, kill tower here, kill tower here. I don't know. I enjoyed it. What can I say? But 99 Nights 2, another one that's going to eventually creep back up and be very expensive on the system if history has shown us anything. So if that sounds interesting, if you like those Dynasty Warrior type games, but or maybe if you don't and you think you would like that style, try this one out, because it's got me convinced. Okay. Let's move on to one that is not from our main man. So a game that I picked this up when it was brand new. I got caught up in the hype. There was a secret Minecraft level in it, and this was when Minecraft had just come out on the 360, so I was very interested in checking it out. It also had local co-op, and that game is Borderlands 2. Now, as someone who always likes to be on the pulse of gaming, not playing the original Borderlands and then seeing all the hype for Borderlands 2, everyone talking about how incredible it looks, how incredible the first game was. I wanted to be a part of it, so I bought it, not day one, but pretty early on, popped it in. I played as the guy who used the sentry gun. I should have just played as the freaking sword ninja robot, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I try to be a little too much of a contrarian just so I can have a better opinion on something instead of just going with the easy route, much like in World of Warcraft. You know, don't just play as the rogue or the hunter, go play a paladin or something. But on Borderlands 2, I just never really got into it. Maybe it was the fact that it was shortly after I played Oblivion where I had a play style where I would summon a beast and then let it fight on my behalf. So basically I summon a beast that would paralyze the enemy and then I would kill the enemy once they were paralyzed. Horrible gameplay loop. Same thing the way this one felt, where I would summon the turret would do the majority of the work, and then I'd just hide. Or more often than not, the turret wouldn't do anything, and then I just felt like I picked a bad class. My wife at the time, who was my girlfriend and we were dating, played as the I can't remember his name, like Sancho or what, the guy with the mohawk who had 2 double machine guns. And when I would see her play, it looked like so much better gameplay. I should have picked her character instead. But then just the natural vibe of the game of constantly, looter shooters in general, changing out your loadout, picking up weapons that are slightly better or have a slightly different, you have an acid burn versus a fire burn versus this. It got all this, there were so many questions, so many choices, but ultimately none of them really mattered to the point of where, don't ask me. Just give me one way to go through it and let me beat it. I don't like this little minutia where my gameplay changes by increments until I get to a synergy where it just blows out. I'm just not into that much. I'm not into that kind of gameplay loop. I got to the Minecraft hidden area, but I never beat the game. I really gave up on it. I don't know why. Something came out. Maybe I got XCOM or something where I just enjoyed it more. But yeah, I've never played another Borderlands game since then other than Tales from the Borderlands. And I just don't have very fond feelings of the series. The movie came out, bombed big time, looked like it was going to bomb. But I don't know, should I check out the other ones? I picked up Borderlands 1 on the Xbox 360 recently, and I'd like to check that one out because I hear it's better. But let me know. I don't know. That's one I was not that impressed with. All right, another game I picked up at the game store recently that I've seen forever, but I'd never seen one that had the slipcover is Brink. And this was made by Bethesda, so you can see you have the slipcover, all that kind of good stuff for the collectors out there. But this game is very, very shallow. It's basically just a matchmaking multiplayer game that has a paper-thin plot to line together the quote-unquote campaign. And I was very disappointed with it. There's not much of a through line. You play as either the Resistance or as the, I guess, the Authority. I think the Authority campaign, you have to be online. And then the Resistance campaign, it's just a set of matchmaking where you are firing off gunplay in corridors, in Halo-type levels, and people spawn endlessly. You spawn endlessly. I did not enjoy this game at all. I did not enjoy the gameplay, the gunplay. The art style is ugly. The characters you create all look atrocious. I can see why no one talks about this. It's funny because I've heard people say nice things about it too, but other than it having a slipcover, I don't want this damn thing in my collection. I mean, especially it's like $5, so yeah, really, really disappointed on Brink. Let me know if any of you guys have played more of it. I don't know, maybe the multiplayer scene was awesome. You know, I heard that the Shadowrun multiplayer scene was great, so maybe that's another one that was like that. But man, did that one, that was a swerve. That's kind of like when I put in Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare and realized, oh wow, this really was just designed as an online game. All right, moving on to the next one. I played and loved the 6th version of this game that came out on the PS5 maybe 2 years ago. It's from a software game. I've always been familiar with the Armored Core series, but I never played any of them past Armored Core 1 other than playing Armored Core 6 a couple of years ago. So I've got Armored Core 4 now, thanks to Michael. And I gotta say, after playing Armored Core 6 and going and playing this one, now I had played Front Mission Evolved, which I assumed would be a little bit like an Armored Core game, but whereas Front Mission Evolved was definitely an arcade experience, you can feel the simulation at this game's core. Just the fact that you have to go through a training tutorial where it teaches you the mechanics. But they're all buttery smooth. You can still glide. You can still do your burst. You can switch weapons to then be able to use different attacks. Though it's funny, the attacks aren't mapped to the triggers. You always assume the attacks are going to be on the triggers, but the attacks in this game are on the A and the X button, I believe, or A and the B button. So that's always fun. Though I couldn't figure out how to elevate my mech. So in the tutorial, there was a part where you would go forward and then you eventually would go up. But in this one, I couldn't really figure it out. Other than that, it felt identical to Armored Core 6, just with, in my opinion, worse maneuverability. But I wouldn't necessarily say that's a complete game changer or killing the game. In fact, I found it quite enjoyable. I really liked the way the mechs felt. The combat was tight. Being able to lock on the enemies and then get the little sub windows seeing the enemies was a nice feature. And I could see this being a fun time. It definitely makes me want to pick up some of the other Armored Cores on the system, being 5 and then 5 Verdict Day, I think it's called. And of course, I'd love to pick up the older ones, the ones on the PS1, PS2. Though I will say, one of the things that kind of drives me nuts about the Armored Core series is the analysis paralysis of too many options on that game too. Because I just don't enjoy. I like one way of playing the game. I understand. I'm on an island with that. You know, some people enjoy tinkering with their loadout to death. I'm not that kind of person. I enjoy trying to get through a game with a certain way of playing it until I can do it. So I like to develop strategies based on the weaknesses of my loadout rather than developing a loadout to overcome the enemy. But anyway, that's me. All right, the next one, and I think we got two more, but the next one, this one was probably the biggest surprise of any of the games that Michael donated. I just wanted to have this one on the docket just because I felt like, all the Spider-Man games on the 360 are really well regarded. Same thing the PS3 ones, and almost all of them got delisted. One I never really hear much about. It's also one of the less pricey ones on the system. Is the Amazing Spider-Man, and he sent me a sealed copy, if you can believe it. But I did open it, because that's what I do. I don't like leaving games sealed, and just so you can see the proof of it, this is a brand new Xbox 360 game that I just played the other day. And I gotta tell you, this game came out in 2012, so that's after Shattered Dimensions, Edge of Time. Most of the other Xbox 360 Spider-Man games that you really hear about, Friend or Foe, etc. This is a direct sequel to the movie. Now, not a sequel as in, yes, they had Amazing Spider-Man 2, but this game takes place directly after the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man. You basically take right after the plots of that movie, like 3 months later, and then there's a new story where Oscorp has taken the lizards, whatever his name, not Doc Ock, whatever his name is. God, how do I not know? He's one of my favorite characters. Anyways, the lizards research is taken over by Oscorp, and they're doing all this experiments where they're making these creatures. And for some reason, Gwen Stacy, who works at Oscorp, which I know nothing about Gwen Stacy. I knew about the Mary Jane Peter Parker, but I know Gwen Stacy's another one of his love interests. So she's in there, and then because Spider-Man's in there, all the other creatures go haywire, escape, and then they are highly contagious, and there's an outbreak, and now it's up to Peter to stop it. But the combat, they talk about how the combat in the 2017 or 2018 Amazing Spider-Man was kind of Arkham-like, but this game really did feel Arkham-like, even better in my opinion. And it came out in 2012, and I almost feel like this game got overshadowed because it was tied to a mediocre movie, and it was tied to so many Spider-Man games on the Xbox 360 by this time, that it just kind of got overshadowed. People assumed it was just a tie-in to the movie with Lizard. But no, this was a completely separate, almost, like I said, it's a sequel to what the movie did. And then there's a sequel to this game that I think is based, or at least a continuation of the second movie. So that's pretty cool. But this was really, really fun. It's linear, which I like. Now, there is an open world you eventually get access to where you can then go to the different missions. But all in all, it's funny how many, when the 2018 Insomniac Spider-Man game came out, I thought that was the first one to really do it that way, but it seems like so many of these other games did almost the exact same thing. Why that game hit it big, I don't know. I think it was just it'd been the recency bias. You had just gotten Spider-Man coming back to the MCU. You had him in good movies at this time. And then just the fact that it was exclusive to the PS4, and the PS4 at that time was clearly dominating the console market as far as the Xbox, PlayStation. I mean, bear in mind, the Switch had just come out too and was making its heyday. But yeah, that was a good one. That was one that I'm very interested in going and playing more of, just because it was so unexpected that it was as good as it was, and I didn't know it came out after the other ones that are always talked to death about how great they are. Speaking of the other ones that are talked about how great they are, this was the last game that Michael sent me, and it is disc only. It was kind of a bonus, and I honestly don't mind, because I really did not expect that I would have a chance to play this, and that is Spider-Man: The Edge of Time. So Spider-Man: The Edge of Time is a direct sequel to Spider-Man: Shattered Dimensions, which is the only Spider-Man game on the 360 that I'd ultimately wanted to go out and get, just because I wanted to play as Spider-Man Noir. I like the idea of having 4 different Spider-Men. This game kind of cuts back on it. There's only 2 Spider-Man, so you have the future Spider-Man, and then you have the original Peter Parker. And instead of like in Shattered Dimensions, where you have a different level for each character, for each level sort of thing, like you go to a splash screen, get into the level, this is really when they started to pare down from that. I think this game came out in 2011. So instead, it's a constant immersive world. So you swap back and forth between the 2 Spider-Man and continue on from there, but there's not just a generic mission select. And what it looks like in this game is that somehow something was changed in the past or the future, which also Val Kilmer is playing the villain in this game, which is cool. If you know who that is, I mean, he was already past his prime when this movie or game came out. Nowadays, is he even still acting? But it just... I liked it. It's kind of the same way I liked 2012, the Amazing Spider-Man 2012 game. Is just some things feel polished, they feel set, and it feels immersive in a way that is hard to fake. Much like Remember Me had that kind of immersion, where the game is taking itself serious in the right way, but not in a way where it's reminding you constantly that you're playing a game. And I just thought that the Spider-Man Edge of Time game did a really nice thing with that. There's a new ability now where you can do a kind of a each Spider-Man has its own thing. So the future one has a decoy versus the regular Spider-Man goes hyper fast, I believe. And there was a cool thing like that in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where you have a bullet time where you can kind of go backwards and forwards through the levels. Anyways, Edge of Time, fun to get it. That's still an expensive one. I think disc only still goes for around $50, $60. So thank you again for that one. Can't believe it. This video would not have been possible if not for our guy there. So thank you again. And then lastly, just because we're gonna talk about a game that is every. I mean, I had to. I have to bring it up. I have to bring up one of these times. We waited to the 31st video, and that is Skyrim. It's just the regular version of Skyrim too. When this game came out on 11/11/2011, I had played Oblivion and was okay with it, but just this game was so revolutionary when it came out, at least for us console plebs. I never played Morrowind, Daggerfall, any of those other ones. I hadn't played any of the really intense Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate inspired games. In Oblivion, like I said, I picked a bad loadout, so I had a bad experience. So on Skyrim, I got in there. I immediately said, I am going two-handed, heavy mace. We're doing this. I am not doing anything else. I'm going full warrior build. I'm going to be melee combat to the death. And I had such a wonderful time playing it. I just have fond memories to this day. It was the first time where literally my entire gaming session for maybe 4, 5, 6 hours was, you know what? Let's go east. Let's go east and find the kind of adventures you would get into. And one of the early ones that was so memorable, with your talent tree, you could get different perks, and one of the perks I got was that you could randomly decapitate an enemy when you're in the middle of fighting them. And so I found a tower where a guy at the bottom of the tower is like, help, my wife has been kidnapped. She's at the top of the tower. I get to the top of the tower. The wife turns out to be some powerful witch who's like, oh no, I'm not kidnapped. In fact, I want to be here. I'm going to kill you now. So you kill the wife, you go back down, and you have an option of what to tell the husband. So I told the husband, like, hey, sorry, I had to kill her. And he went nuts. He immediately started attacking me. And on the first blow, I procced the beheading. So I bumped him in the chest. He went over. I took the mace and he was donezo. And I had literally just spent an hour trying to help this guy rescue his wife, only to then be prompted to have him attack me and instantly one-shot him. And it was just one of those things where I talk about these moments in gaming that you live for, or that are just so memorable that really just unlock that dopamine receptor. And that was such a fond memory. I still talk about it to this day. To the point where, you know, the downfall of Skyrim is obviously there's a lot of content to do, but not all of it's all that engaging after, 20, 30, 50, 100 hours. Now, by that time, you're still playing 100 hours of it, but I got over it, and I never even finished the main plot line until years later, where I went through and I did finally, quote-unquote, beat the game. But I really enjoyed playing it. It's on every system. It's a meme now. A remaster of this. I bought the remaster on the Switch, too, just because, what the hell. But yes, Skyrim. If you don't have Skyrim, you gotta pick it up. I'm sure you've played it on all the other systems, but there you go. All right, guys. Well, that's what you get for this week. And, hey, we had another person join our Patreon this last week, so you know what that means. Dominic the Man. You the man. If you don't know what that means, every time I have someone join on Patreon, we do a ridiculous turn to the camera and then explodes like we just did. So thank you again, my friend. Happy to have you. You also had such a nice comment. Who knows? Maybe someday we can grab a drink or a meal someday, because I'd love to meet you. But I just, and I think it goes for everyone. Any of you guys, it's so nice having you here. I'm so grateful. I could not believe how well last week's video did. We have a chance of getting the 4,000 subs by the end of the year. Nuts. We just hit 2,000 this year. I really just, I cannot say thank you enough times. So, hey, as a reminder, I release a video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.